up in particular for the petition that Grassroots put out. And I want to thank everyone for doing that. It's a true testament of what Grassroots is and who it's comprised of. To date, we have 13,256 signatures and thousands of public comments associated with that petition. Those findings and signatures have been sent to Congress, I believe, in its entirety. And we do have a list of the next stage of folks that need to be reminded of it and acknowledge receipt of the petition and signatures. The intent of the petition was to implore Congress to avoid the fiscal cliff, and at this point in time, move forward with the passage of the Wildland Firefighter Pay Protection Act. And then Grassroots as a whole, our initial intent was and still is to provide a platform for education, cohesion, community advocacy, and self-advocacy. Along the way, we have found ourselves in a very fortunate position of being able to act as subject matter experts for legislative efforts and provide a voice from the ground to the Washington office as it's comprised with the Fire and Aviation Management Team with the United States Forest Service, the Office of Wildland Firefighter for the Department of Interior, and a very quality relationship with the United States Department of Agriculture. I think it's important to highlight where we have come from since our formation in 2019. And again, I will always reiterate that Grassroots is not taking credit for any of the change that has taken place, but we do want to see change. This has been an ongoing effort for over 3 decades with multiple parties involved in advocating for workforce reform. To date, since 2019, some of the successes, large and small, start with the Biden bonus with the increase in entry-level pay to $15. From there, we were able to see the budget and infrastructure law come through with some fairly large and monumental changes, starting with classification and series, the pay supplement, and the down payment for the Joint Comprehensive Health and Wellbeing Program. We've also been able to successfully have quality relationships and been able to influence the Tim Hart Pay Parity and Classification Act. In the 117th Congress, we saw the House version come through. And in the 118th, we were successfully able to see not just a House version reintroduced, but also a Senate companion bill, thanks to Senator Bennett out of Colorado. We will always hold Tim's Act as the gold standard for what we're trying to advocate for, and we'll continue to advocate for Tim's Act. We've been force multipliers and influences for the Federal Firefighter Fairness Act and the Federal Firefighter Pay Protection Act. I wouldn't be doing anyone any good if I didn't give credit to Bob Beckley and NIFI for his long-lasting influence and work on the final passage of the Federal Firefighter Fairness Act, and just NIFI's impact that they've had over the last, well, really since 2019. So where are we right now? And we'll go into details of this further with our legislative update with Mr. John Golden. And perspectives from our Vice President Riva and Secretary Bobby Scopa. But where we are right now, the Wildland Firefighter Pay Protection Act, we have to see this cross the finish line in order to avoid the fiscal cliff. We need this in order to provide an anchor point to continue to advocate not only for more and better pay reform, but also for the other aspect of Tim's Act that currently aren't on the table. We have to have the Wildland Firefighter Pay Protection Act passed as soon as possible and before the end of this fiscal year. It's the step needed to continue to move forward. It is monumental. We're not saying it's perfect, but it is monumental. And as I said, it's the anchor point that we desperately need to avoid the firefighter fiscal cliff. And again, I do have to thank NIFI for the attitude, effort, and expertise that they are providing for workforce reform. And we're thankful to all of you for being a part of grassroots and continuing to advocate and provide cohesion to this movement as we move forward. With that, I will hand it to Reva.
Thanks, Luke. So I wanna just echo what Luke said about the WFPPA. You know, we have been very vocal and clear that it's not perfect, it's not enough. But as Luke said, it's a good place to start. And even folks within the agency weren't happy about it because they wanted the president's budget, which was a lot more comprehensive. The pay was an issue with that as well. But we were on a call yesterday with Forest Service and Office of Wildland Fire and the director of Office of Wildland Fire, so he's over fire for DOI. He said that this to him is just what Luke said. It's a beginning, and it is a beginning of many more and better things to come downstream. So that was good to hear. We don't feel like it's lip service. We do feel they're very sincere in that. So I do want to talk a little bit about some of the advantages of this proposal, this bill versus the BIL supplement. With the BIL supplement, y'all were getting a lot more money in your pocket in your take-home pay, and that's been a great thing. And with the pay table in the WFPPA, we know that that is not going to equal that, the money you see in your pocket. And as you go up in GS levels, you know, you folks are getting quite a bit less. The things for folks to keep in mind who are permanent employees, and those of you who are temporary and maybe seeking permanent employment, is that it is a base pay increase. And you know, if you've only got a few years in and you still got 20 years to go to retirement, sometimes it's really hard to see the end of that tunnel there. But this will contribute towards your retirement. And so if you're contributing to the TSP, which all of you should be contributing to TSP, this will also automatically up your contributions into the TSP, which also is for your retirement. So try to keep these things in mind, you know, and again, it's less money in your pocket, but you know, this is going to pay for the future for your retirement, which is pretty critical. So just try to keep that in mind. I do want to also say that we have a lot of journalists to thank. We're very fortunate that we have established some really good relationships with journalists who truly do care about what we're facing and have been willing to keep our story in the media. We've got a few journalists who have done more than one story and are looking at doing others. And so that's been pretty critical because we need our story out there, not just in front of legislators and the agencies, but we need it in the public. They need to understand the sacrifices that you're all making. And as we've been saying, even if people don't have wildfires in their backyard, everybody will be impacted at some point in time. You know, we saw the smoke in the east that woke a lot of people up, and we need the public's help with this. We need them on our side, and we need them advocating for these reforms as well. So shout out to the media. And then lastly, I just want to thank our communications team. So we have a very small team of current wildland firefighters who run our social media. They do our news releases. We have a press email list with 13,000 journalists, and they're all fighting fire right now. And a friend of mine actually thought we were paying like a public relations communications company to do all this work for us because it's so professional and they do such a great job. You know, we have one of our own runs our website and updates that. And so when we were trying to get these last few news releases out and deliver the petition to legislators, these were folks getting up early before being on assignment and getting up before shift or working after they got off shift to try and get this stuff posted on social media, sent out to these email lists. And so they deserve a huge thanks. They're all anonymous, and you know, they range from like GS6s to GS9s, and they're they feel so passionate about this as well. And so I just, if you get a chance, if you're commenting on social media or anything, give them a shout out and give them a thanks, because we literally could not get these messages out without our communications team, because they are top notch. And then with that, I'm going to turn it, and hopefully some of them are on the call. So great job, guys. And then I'm going to hand it off to Bobby. Thanks, everybody. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Reva. I just have a couple comments I wanted to make. The first one is I want to thank all of you, because nothing we're doing can happen without all of you. So I do really mean that. And the 13,200 and some signatures, that's amazing. And that has made an impact. That's made an impact on just how visible grassroots has become. And so that's thanks to all of you and your friends who might have signed it and that sort of thing. But I want to start with a conversation we had yesterday with the Washington Office for the Forest Service and the DOI fire program, as well as the the Chief of Staff for the Secretary of Agriculture. Now, I worked back in DC on details, probably a total of almost a year. The last one was like 8 months. And I was working in the Fire and Aviation Management Office, and I was working as the Deputy Fire Director for Operations. And I was working in that circle of folks back in DC, going to meetings, trying to represent the folks and that sort of thing. And so, I've been retired for 4 years, and here we are having conversations with Reva, and Luke and I are on Zoom calls with the Deputy Chief for State and Private, which is where fire is, the fire, I don't know what the correct term is for DOI, the wildland, the wildland office, their fire director, representing all the DOI agencies, along with the Chief of Staff for the Secretary of Agriculture. There have been calls where we've had the an Undersecretary of Agriculture on the calls with us, and a dozen other people, including the fire director for the Forest Service and that sort of thing. The reason I bring this up is because this is so unusual. This is crazy unusual. And we are really, really fortunate to have this kind of access to the folks in DC. Now, no one could possibly be more cynical than me when it comes to, how things work back in DC. I've spent my time back there, and I have my cynicism. I earned my cynicism, but I got to tell you, the fact that this group, and I've come into it late. I didn't start helping on the board until the first of the year. But you and all the folks that have been involved have done an outstanding job to have this kind of trust with the folks back in DC. It's so unusual. Nothing like this would have ever happened back when I was working in DC, not because I didn't think we should, but because there was no rapport, there was no trust. And Kelly and Reva and Luke have really done such an amazing job to have that kind of trust with those folks back there. So now, the proof is in the pudding. I know that the bureaucrats back in the Washington office and the Department of Interior are working hard. They really do want us to get the pay. They really do want us to get the benefits, and they're fighting an uphill battle to make that all happen. So I just got to tell you, I am impressed with the amount of access we have. And keep in mind, we're not the union. We're just an advocacy group. The union has legal rights to information. They have legal, there's a legal relationship between the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. and the union. They have access that we don't have. But I can tell you, the folks back in DC have bent over backwards trying to make sure that our group is involved to the degree that they can involve us, because they know we are effective and we can get the word out. 13,000 signatures isn't nothing. And we have access to the press now. And we even have politicians complaining when we're not nice enough to them. So that's a sign that we are impacting on the process. So I just need to say that. The other thing I wanted to mention is, as we get close, here we are in August, and they're in recess, Congress is in recess, and they're only going to have a short amount of time for the bill is now over in the House. It's only a short period of time where this thing can get passed, but there could be the continuing resolution, the CR that we have dealt with, off most years for the last however many, can still include the pay raise that's included in the bill that's passed the Senate. It's gone to the House. So without getting into all of the details of it, which I'd probably screw up if I did, I just want you to know that if we go to a continuing resolution, it doesn't mean that you will end up losing pay at the end of in this fall, like we are worrying about the fiscal cliff. They can do the CR in such a way that we can make sure that the pay stays intact, and the agency is going to try to make that happen. So you're just going to have to stand by. And I think we all, I got to say the same words that you've already heard, but this is not the law we want to see passed. This is not the answer to the problems, but it's a step. It's a significant step. And if it passes, we're going to have to keep on working. This will just be the beginning of the next steps that we want to take to be successful. So with that, who's next, Riva? Is it Johnny?
Yep.
Johnny, you want to take it up?
Sure, I'll go next. Thanks everyone, and thank you to grassroots wildland firefighters, and most importantly, I think thank you to everybody that's in attendance tonight that may be out on assignment. If you don't know who I am, I'm Jonathan Golden. I volunteer with Grassroots to do legislative affairs stuff with them and kind of help move the ball along as far as it goes with getting wildland firefighter pay corrected. My background, I was with the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management for over a decade on a number of resource types, hotshot crews, engines, helitax, so on and so forth. But that's not what I'm here to talk to you guys about tonight. Yeah, so with that, the Wildland Firefighter Pay Protection Act. It's a bill that's moving in the Senate. It recently cleared the Committee of Jurisdiction, the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, and was just had a House companion filed August 8th by Congressman Neguse and Reps Katie Porter. And actually, it earned some bipartisan support too, with some Republicans in Oregon and Florida as well. And so this is the path. This is the bill right now that is making its way through Congress to try to stem anybody falling off of any sort of cliff, fiscal or whatever other cliff may be in your path. But this is the bill that is going to be, I think that spending a lot of time with the two chambers of Congress. And from what I understand is that there's 12 working days for the House of Representatives to actually move this bill through subcommittees, markup, have a hearing, make sure it has bipartisan support, and then mark it up. But what I think is what's happening is there are also some behind the scenes negotiations that are taking place in order to make sure that this bill or the funding of this bill reaches the pocketbooks of wildland firefighters that work for the federal agencies. So today there was a meeting with both majority and minority leaders of the Senate and House Appropriations Committees with the agencies to discuss what emergency funding will look like, whether, you know, the WFPPA, if it's funded through this emergency funding, will be permanent or not, and what it may or may not include. And what I can't tell you any more about the outcome of that meeting because I don't know, but what I can tell you is that the negotiations are continuing to happen. Bobby touched on really quickly the talk about a CR. So I feel fairly confident talking to the different staff in the different offices, both Republican and Democrat in the Senate and the House, that should there be a continuing resolution passed, that the wildland firefighters will not be left behind on that CR. There will be a way to make sure that the pay is not reduced back to pre-infrastructure and Infrastructure Act levels, and that it should match that of the WFPPA. Now, of interesting note, this afternoon, Director of Office of Management Budget, Shalonda Young, sent a letter out on behalf of the administration to Speaker McCarthy requesting emergency supplemental funding across a variety of issues that pertain to the United States. You know, everything from competition with China to supporting Ukraine, but most importantly for this conversation, wildland firefighter pay. So the direct language in the text stipulates that for the Department of Agriculture Forest Service, for wildland fire management, $45 million of funding would be used for pay reforms for the federal wildland firefighting workforce as proposed in the President's FY24 budget for the first quarter of FY23. I'm sorry, I think that's a typo, for the first quarter of FY24. And then for the Department of Interior department-wide programs, it's the identical language, but the funding amount was for $15 million. And so what this will do is it kind of sets a precedent that no matter what, there will be some sort of emergency funding mechanism triggered should we hit a CR that will allow wildland firefighters to get paid and to not again revert back down to those lower levels. I think a couple other things that I want to flag for the audience at large, because I know this is of interest to folks, but housing was an issue when I was a hiring manager and onboarding folks. I think some of the things that's encouraging to find in both the Senate and House housing, or not housing, but appropriations reporting language is that in the Senate, they're reporting, the reporting requirement directed to the Forest Service asks them to provide the Senate with a, I think 90 days or maybe a half a year of inventory of what they currently have and what their forecasted needs are so that they can have more funds appropriated to them. And in the House, House appropriators for the Department of Interior wide programs have allocated $12 million for housing. It's probably a far cry from where we need to be, but I think given that, especially in the House with everything being held to fiscal year 2022 levels, the fact that we got a little extra money for housing is kind of a big deal. And the fact that wildfire as it is being held to roughly around FY23 levels, is a message that, while they might have their differences and some folks want to tighten the belt of the budget, they recognize that wildfire is an issue that's not going away, and we actually have to continue investing money in it year over year. So, with that said, I think there's still room and time for the Wildland Firefighter Pay Protection Act to make it through Congress. But if it doesn't make it through by the end of the fiscal year, I feel fairly confident that there is emergency measures in place to actually go ahead and begin funding wildland firefighters, what I think the administration is proposing. That's kind of what I have in a nutshell. And I don't know if you want to do questions now or later, but I'm just going to go on mute and stop talking. Thanks.
Thanks, Johnny. I don't have an agenda in front of me. Is next Kelly's.
Yeah, but she couldn't be on.
Yeah, I can just go through. So for folks that probably know, and if you don't know, Kelly Martin is one of the co-founders of Grassroots Wildland Firefighters, was the first president of Grassroots Wildland Firefighters, and was appointed to the president's Wildland Fire Mitigation and Management Commission. We were hoping to have her on today, but she's been held up to give a bit of an update on the Mitigation and Management Commission. From Kelly, there's not a lot that can be divulged at this point in time, but she did say that the thing to mention is much of the work Grassroots is working on has been transferred to the commission as it pertains to workforce. Nothing at this point that can be divulged again, because they're not going public with it until September. And then the report will be presented to Congress sometime in late September. And then she'll have more to share publicly. And I don't know if it's worth sharing, but some of those findings I think have been divulged to congressional staffs, and there is buy-in from congressional staffs to legislate off of these congressional findings. So it's a positive step. And then we can go to Dutch for comprehensive health and well-being and finish up with the website if that works.
Works for me. All right, welcome everyone, and thanks for being here. My name is Pete Dutchick. I go by Dutch as well. Currently the chair of the Comprehensive Health and Wellbeing Subcommittee. We've been working together roughly about 3 years. And as Grassroots is broken out into 4 pillars, we are underneath pillar 2, which is comprehensive health and well-being. So, as has been talked about thus far on the call, really one of the primary focuses, or at least what's going on legislatively now, is on pay and benefits, comprehensive health and well-being, and or funding for mental health programs was on the original president's proposal. I just want to be clear with everyone that did not make it into the WFPPA. While we were disappointed about that, reason being was this bill in particular was strictly focused on pay. That was made clear throughout the process. And while, again, we would always love to see more money going toward behavioral health and comprehensive health and well-being programs, this was not included on the bill. So just wanted to make that clear. With that said, it is certainly, on the top of our radar to continue to focus on working on supporting current legislation such as TIMS Act that does have additional measures to support mental health programs, along with look for opportunities to present future legislation where things are possible, and at least serve as subject matter experts in that field. So as far as what our committee is working on, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it, but I just want to thank all those volunteers who help out on the Comprehensive Health and Wellbeing Subcommittee. A lot of them have been present from the start. We do have some new members, and just very grateful for all the time that they've put in and effort. So thanks to all of them. As far as some of the updates beyond the legislative piece, for those that are not aware, last year, the National Defense Authorization Act did go through some of the language that was on TIMS Act and also on the Firefighter Fairness Act, that did go through and provide presumptive cancer coverages into law for wildland firefighters. And so our efforts right now are to follow up what was not on that bill, or was not present, was some of the female reproductive issues, cancers, things of that. So that's something we are following up with, just to see, and any other cancers. We are building some networks with subject matter experts, just to see exactly what we can do to help support that. So that's something we're following up on the NDAA from last year. Also of note, if you didn't make the last call, in April, there was a summit, a behavioral health summit, held by Office of Wildland Fire and the Forest Service, first of its kind. And that is a tribute to the effort that's going on internally, folks that are working to develop these programs to help support wildland firefighters. So we are continuing to follow up on that. It's certainly not easy getting, 4 different agencies, and then the Forest Service side, so 5 total, together on the same page, but they are managing to do it, and they're putting a lot of effort into it. So we're really grateful for that. Something of note that was put into TIMS Act this year that I think is worth mentioning. In the language, you'll see there is a push and to standardize that Special Claims Unit, OWCP, under Department of Labor, do recognize psychological stress-related illness such as PTSD as presumed or related to wildland fire activities. This would be huge in helping to make the connection between what people are experiencing out on the line, whether that's close calls or whether that's obvious trauma that they've experienced, or whether that's long-term exposure. So that is something we are continuing to focus on. It's in writing, it's in TIMS Act, and we are looking to see if that can be supported administratively as well. So that was really big. If you haven't had a chance to see that, please take a look on our website. A few other things that we are following up on right now. Medical standards have been introduced by the Forest Service, similar to what exists under the DOI right now. So essentially, DOI, as far as when I was there 3 years ago, in order to be considered for hire, you have to pass a physical, and then once every 3 years you had a physical. Prior to that, you have to answer a questionnaire. So it sounds like Forest Service is going the same way. We are diving into that a bit more as it pertains to the some of the mental health or behavioral health questions. We know it's been a little bit intrusive, and so we've been talking with some folks that have dealt with that. I know I've worked with quite a few folks that, if you answer questions honestly, you have to go through a whole nother process. So we are working with folks that have gone through that, and working with some folks from the agencies to see what that looks like. To my knowledge, the union is working on that as well. So, there's a lot of steps involved in that, but, as these medical standards are developed, we just want to ensure that they're fair, and they're capturing things correctly, while ultimately protecting employees and making folks feel comfortable. So we are following up on that. There are some subject matter experts working on respirator studies right now. So we are working on that. That's through DOI and Forest Service. And with that, again, I just want to reiterate, as far as 2019 to now, we've come a long way. It's been a roller coaster. You know, for every win that you get, no matter how small or how historic, there's always more work to be done to improve that. That's just the nature of legislation, and quite frankly, at this point, I think just the nature of how things are. So, you know, I would encourage folks to stay hopeful. Like Luke mentioned, these are very historic steps forward. And I have no reason to believe that we can't continue, no matter what happens in the next few months. Whether we get everything we want or not, we will continue to keep pushing, keep fighting, and continue to move the ball forward. So thanks for everyone's effort. And with that, I believe that's just about everything on comprehensive health and well-being. Thanks, everyone. Back to you, Luke.
Thanks, Dutch. Let's see if I can share my screen.
I set it so others could. So if you can't, I've got the website up as well.
Okay, yeah, I'm working on one of the world's oldest Mac computers. If you don't mind, Reba, I'd appreciate that.
Okay. Let me get out of here. Okay, can everybody see the Grassroots Wildland Firefighter website? Yes?
Not yet. No.
Not yet.
No.
All right. Oh, okay. So Luke, it won't because you're sharing still.
Still?
Let's try it. How about now?
Not yet.
Normally Smoke Jumper Bro does this part, but he's on fire assignment. So let me try it again.
If I'm sharing, let me see if you can see it on mine. Nada?
Nope.
All right. Yeah, sorry, everyone. I don't believe in excuses, so I won't provide one now, but I certainly can't figure this computer out.
This is just proof that we're volunteers and not professional operators.
Huh. Well, maybe, well, I mean, if folks go to the website, I know what we wanted to point out. Three things on the top three headers are the most current press releases, including the petition to sign, and then it has the most current press releases that we've come out. One specifically in support of the Wildland Firefighter Pay Protection Act. One that pointed out some gaps or holes in the Wildland Firefighter Pay Protection Act, and our initial press release that was specifically in support of WFPPA. And then on the top right, again, for grassroots, one thing that we've always said and will continue to do, no one on this board or associated with grassroots is compensated in any way, shape, or form. But there is a donate button in the top right-hand corner. You can either donate, once, or you can join our Give Butter campaign, and that's been turned into a bit of a competition depending on what module you work on and what your tour of duty is. So whether you're a temporary, seasonal, 13 and 13, 18 and 8, 26 and 0, there's a variety of categories that you can potentially donate as. We will never hold information hostage, and it does not do anything but help us continue to advocate for the boots on the ground, paying for Washington DC trips this year. Reva's made a trip. I've made two, made one with John Golden. Bobby was there as well for the press conference, sponsored by Representative Porter. So take a look. It's fairly self-explanatory. If I can figure it out, then I imagine all of you folks that are much smarter than me on this call that can figure Zoom out, well, I can't, would be in better hands than myself. And I'll open it up to Q&As. And just to reiterate what everyone said, like, we need this anchor point with WFPPA. We will continue to advocate for the portions that are left out. And I think it's a positive sign. It's on record, but no matter who is pushing for WFPPA, from the administration, Forest Service, BLM, USDA, Senator Bennett, anyone, any congressional member, they are all recognize this as a good first step. And that's what we're trying to take, extend the bridge of bill and continue to improve upon the positive forward momentum that's been created from 2019 to where we are right now. And with that, I'll open it up to Q&A.
Luke, can I just, one more thing on the website? You know,
Yep.
the bill languages, all this stuff is super complicated. If you don't know something, please don't speculate, because, you know, bad information, wrong information is not helpful. And so we try to make our website one-stop shopping. You can go look at summaries of legislation proposed and introduced. You can look at the actual links to actual, if you want to read the whole thing and all the legalese. So we have a lot of great information. We try to make it as easy on everybody as possible. Also, if you sign up for our newsletter, you'll get regular updates when we do news releases or something's going on, a call to action. It doesn't cost anything. So that's also really helpful. And yeah, that's it for the website. Thanks. For the Q&A, y'all can put a comment in the chat, or you can raise your little hand in your window. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and take questions now. First question is, what can we do to help at this point? Maybe Johnny, Luke can talk about legislation.
I can chime in. I mean, it never hurts to reach out to your elected officials, which, I know that sounds silly, and, is like, people want to poo-poo that, but it really is effective. And actually right now is probably the best time, because everybody has cleared out of DC for August recess, and they're back in their home state, home district, having field hearings, having in-district office hours. Yeah, so you're saying yours is McClintock? Well, I don't know. Find somebody, a better candidate, I guess. Start the process now if you're not satisfied with that member. But I think really a big part of it, though, is look, it's all about outreach and education. And the union can do it, we can do it, but it really is more powerful when you can have or use your authentic voice to tell your authentic story, and really express to your member, like to your senator, your congressperson, how much this impacts you and how much it impacts your community, which ultimately is their constituency. So yeah, I think that you can vote him out, as Steve has stated in the chat, which, that's your prerogative. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I mean, really finding any opportunity, and I don't know if you're out on assignment right now, but I think there was somebody else in the chat said, get your family to call, get your brothers, sisters to call, and you just got to keep calling. keep calling, keep calling, keep calling, like until they're so tired of hearing from you that they're going to actually like be compelled to act. And then they'll be like, fine, I did something, stop calling. But that's what you can do to help. Continue to raise awareness with the media, continue to just, be an advocate and be informed on the issues and be educated, and not stick your head in the sand, as my wife likes to say to me. So that's, I think, something that you can take with you and apply and have it spread around you.
And just to reiterate how helpful, what you have done and what you are doing has been. I got 2 videos from 2023 Tahoe Summit yesterday of 2 California Representative Kevin Kiley and Senator Catherine Cortez Mastro, and whether it's what they led in with or what they spoke about, but they both specifically talked about the necessity to support wildland firefighters and avoid the firefighter fiscal cliff. And I think that you can find those examples within the administration and throughout Congress right now as some of the leading talking points that exist. So keep reaching out, keep doing it, regardless of who it is or who's not answering. But we just got to keep plugging away, and there's a lot more work to be done.
A comment is, I'll take the less complicated one first. Someone is asking, they'd like to contact their reps, but not sure what they should write to advocate most effectively, and ask if we have draft letters. We do have a place on our website where you can go, and all you have to do is, I think, put in your zip code, and because not everybody might know who the representative is, right? And it'll automatically show that, and it'll go to the right person. And we have a little blurb in there. You can edit that and kind of make your story your own. And that's what we've been trying to do. Tell your own story. When those of you who signed the petition, we had what's at stake in there. Man, we got some great comments, personal stories about what's at stake. And when we submitted the petition, we sent all those comments. We scrubbed them, right? We removed all the contact stuff, but we want them to hear, not just a bunch of people signed it, but we want to hear on what the consequences are of the fiscal cliff. So just tell your story. It doesn't have to be fancy or elaborate. We have one person just got their perm and have a question about infrastructure and how pay is calculated. So for the BIL supplement, the pay is just 50% or $20,000, whichever is less. And so it's very simple, very straightforward, doesn't matter what GS level you were. And so that's what you'll be getting if you're in fact talking about the infrastructure. And then if you're talking about the proposed permanent base pay raise, there are links to the pay tables that show by GS the percentage of pay raise over the GS level. And you can easily Google the GS levels by locality and rest of that. So I hope that helps. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Like someone said, write your honest story with your own anecdotes. We have a spouse who reached out to us and said, they may not be able to afford childcare now. And that person may have to quit their job, right? Because childcare is so expensive. So those are the kinds of stories, right? You might struggle to pay your mortgage or your rent, or you want to be able to buy a house. So tell those stories.
Hey, Jim Whittington asked about strategy for the future. When you finish the current task, do you have a strategy for moving forward? And how would we be able to start planting the seeds for those future efforts? I don't know if we have done anything on that yet, because we're still kind of like in the middle of a knife fight. And I think once we see where this all lands, then we'll have to start working on next steps, because there's so much work to do moving forward. So I think we're going to have our hands full for a while, Jim, and you should help.
I can add to that as well. I think we have planted the seeds for moving forward with the relationships that have been built. legislatively, administratively. We're quite fortunate to be able to have monthly calls with the WOs. We consistently bring concerns from the field, that we consistently brought concerns from the field to the WO in regard to WFPPA and what some of the holes that might be created with it and what they can anticipate. Because one of the great things about the Firefighter Pay Protection Act is that it allows administrative action versus congressional action to ensure that bill supplement is maintained. It might take a year once those gaps are discovered, but the intent is there to not just make sure that the bill supplement is maintained through WFPPA, but there's, potential administrative fixes if people fall through the cracks because of the inclusion of the daily supplement, plus the pay table percentage raise to equate to bill. If that doesn't work out, then there's the administrative ability to do so. And then in terms of what's been left out to date, like if you look at Tim's Act 1.0, classification, position descriptions have been dealt with to a certain extent and are being dealt with and created. The supplement came from the Joint Comprehensive Health and Wellbeing, housing, and a few other things. And those seeds are planted. And with the legislative context and the administrative context that exist, people know, and those are going to be forthcoming. And we hope to certainly maintain the relationships and be able to serve as force multipliers, influencers, subject matter experts on further legislation coming down.
The only other thing I would just add to that, as far as from 2019 till now, we've created 4 pillars. And those, I think, really have kind of been the mission and or the vision, or I should say they've been built around that. And so, from everything that's been said, when, we get a little piece of pillar 1 and maybe a bit of pillar 2, that makes pillar 3 more feasible. And of course, pillar 3 being increased capacity of workforce. But I would say, as far as long term, we always keep those pillars in mind as something that we look to and take one step at a time. So, and yeah, by reaching out to your legislators, by letting us know what's happening, by reaching out to us with issues you're experiencing, that's really powerful. Like Riva was mentioning earlier. Some of the issues we don't know exist until you reach out to us, and we are able to pass those up and hopefully move the ball on some of those larger issues. So just being involved is really critical.
Okay, we have a few more questions. Has there been any discussion as to why the percentage rates for the supplement pay? Why was it not wanted to keep it at a similar amount across all GS levels to support all people and to entice personnel to continue to promote into the higher positions in the organization? So Johnny was involved in some of those negotiations, as was Luke. So I don't know if you guys want to try to quickly tackle that one. We have a few more questions.
I'd have to ask a clarifying question first on the supplemental pay. Is that the daily supplement or the pay table itself with the descending pay percentage increases?
I think they're asking the difference between the BIL supplement and the pay table.
Okay, so BIL, which was,
I got that wrong. Correct us in the chat. Go ahead.
yeah, from my understanding, and John needs to step in, or anyone for that matter, but the pay supplement was a supplement. It put more money in your pocket for the last 2 years, but it didn't affect retirement, your overtime rates, etc. From my understanding is that there is still the desire to have incentive pay out there for folks to go on fires. So the pay table plus the daily supplement as written in WFPPA together are supposed to equate or be greater than what was received in budget and infrastructure law. And that's about as simply as I can put it for my smooth brain. But it's a combination of the percentage pay raise or that pay table as seen, plus bill that is meant to be equal to or greater than what was given in budget and infrastructure law.
Well, and I'll speak candidly, we don't agree with that. And it's continues the reliance on overtime and hazard pay and other differentials. And those are not guaranteed and those are not plannable incomes. But you have to know that there was a lot of compromising going on because there are elected officials and people even within the agencies who thought that was too much. And so that's where we're starting, hopefully, if it goes through. But there's reviews built into that to compare the BL supplement to the WFPPA would be. And there's definitely room for better, changes to increase the pay in the future. So.
Yeah, and it's actually mandated in Firefighter Pay Protection Act that the agency look at the 2023 pay levels and then compare it to what WFPPA would look like in 2024 and fix administratively, not congressionally, which is a good thing. Fix it. So it's delayed gratification. I know it probably doesn't make people super stoked, but it is a positive that those abilities are being granted to the administration versus having to go through the congressional process that we've gone through, which has been a heck of a process. And it's not just the agencies. And I have to say, in my opinion, the people working on this and talking to us on a monthly basis, sometimes more frequent than that, within fire and aviation management and the Office of Wildland Fire and the USDA, all the way up to the White House, want to see what right looks like become reality. And I've been incredibly impressed with the effort being put in by those folks in Washington, D.C. And I say that as probably the largest detractor. I was a 12-year hotshot, 18-year Forest Service person. I trusted no one except for my hotshot crew. I have a lot of faith in the work that's being done and the people that are doing it within. And the more pressure that we can provide via grassroots, via the union, the better, because we got to keep going.
We have another question about some employees didn't receive their retention bonus after receiving it for the last 6 months. Now we know BIA had an issue where the HR pay folks made a mistake and it cut off everybody's supplement, but in BIA, they are aware of it and they're working to restore it. So not knowing your agency, but if folks are having issues, then they're ongoing. Then again, they need to open a ticket, because these are antiquated systems. One of the reasons this had to be a supplement is because the pay systems that we're all under, all the agencies, are 20, 30, 40 years old, right? And they don't recognize a lot of the modern ways. And so there are always going to be problems when we have such an antiquated system of pay. And so folks need to open a ticket, if they're having issues. And it's good to hear the regional office is working on it. We know there are some people who still have not gotten any supplement pay. I just had someone reach out to me. We put that person in contact with someone and they were able to get that resolved. But so if it's not being worked on, if you're getting the runaround, just let us know, send us an email.
And if you open a ticket, I know that we were advised to spread this word. If you open a ticket, don't open a new ticket. Keep calling back and referring to the initial ticket that you opened, because if you keep opening them, then it just keeps screwing up and delaying the system, not just for yourself, but for everyone. So open a ticket, keep referring to it. And I mean, I love continuously calling ASC and asking over and over again to talk to someone that could answer my questions. So be persistent, but use the same ticket number and same case number.
So yeah, he did verify that as BIA, so they're aware of it, we're aware of it, but keep us posted, right? Another question, when this passes, will there be a stopgap for the months it takes to implement? It's a great question.
I'd say worst case scenario, it's gonna be back pay. I know that we've been told that they are preparing a stopgap if there is a delay in implementation. I don't know what that looks like, but worst case back pay. And I do believe that they are working on something that is better than waiting for back pay and reverting for however long it's gonna take to go back to what it looked like pre-bill. And we can also ask that question and verify it for you specifically.
And then we have a clarification of an earlier question for the person who just got their perm. They're referring to FLSA and overtime. Is there a document out there that has that information in it? And so if you wanna speak up, you can speak up in here. If you wanna just ask us to make sure we're capturing exactly what your concerns are. And you're talking and verify you're talking about the BIL supplement.
Yes, ma'am, I sure am. What exactly I'm referring to is I'm trying to figure out how they're calculating overtime pay. There's a question on the USDA form on your website, question 8, asks how the BIL supplement is affected for non-exempt employees and specifically related to FLSA and overtime calculation. And the questionnaire, it's asked and the question says, yes, it affects it. So I started asking questions exactly how it affects it. And it got to the point to where I submitted a congressional. The folks from Albuquerque called me back and I talked to one lady in particular, and she said at this time, the Forest Service is solely focused on getting folks paid and not explaining how they're coming to the figures they're coming to.
FLSA is one of the most confusing and complex things. We've even heard that from high level people within the agencies, right? And so we don't want to, we have tried our best to wrap our heads around it. Now, if you are a certain GS level and non-supervisory, then you're not subject to the pay cap, under emergency pay. So like on a P code or severity. And so if you just now got your perm, I'm assuming you're a little bit lower GS, and so it should not impact your pay. You should get the full amount. The supplement has no bearing on anybody's overtime. So again, it's considered a separate, and because it wasn't a base pay increase, you don't get a higher rate of overtime. The supplement is just the supplement. Your overtime and hazard pay and any other differentials are still determined on your base GS level pay. And I think we might have some information on our website about that, and hopefully that helps. It's super complex and we're really cautious because we don't want to give out the wrong information.
Okay, and just to expand on that, I'm a WG employee, heavy equipment operator helper.
Yeah.
And to further this question, you guys were speaking of it's like a percentage slide scale with the new legislation that's the possibility of it being enacted. And there's a little blurb right underneath the percentage. It says basically for wage grade operators, they're going to get something comparable to their GS counterparts. What does comparable mean? If I'm a 5, are they going to look if I'm a WG5, are they going to look at a GS5, a GS6? Are they going to go straight across as to what my pay would equate to?
Yeah, so are you aware that depending on where you live as a wage grade 5, someone who lives in another state, even adjacent to you as a wage grade 5 might have a different pay than you because it's
I am.
by the local DOD, right? So
Yeah.
super complicated, right? And so it should be looking at your pay and not comparable to like a percentage, not comparable to the GS, because there's no correlation with the GS. So that's what it should be. The intent is, again, I heard it talked about yesterday in a call. The intent is for all of this to be as inclusive as it can be for everybody. And that's why
Sure.
that is in there.
Okay. Well, that clarifies some things. And, I it just makes me think when someone tells me they're not willing. And the lady that I talked to in Albuquerque, she said at this time we're not going to disclose the formula. And naturally, I'm skeptical when someone decides they don't want to be transparent, and they may not be hiding anything, but it's just rather difficult for me to accept that they just can't tell you.
Right. Yeah, and are you aware of coding your time? You have to do it every pay period for the RSEL.
You can't do that as a WG employee.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So mine, I
And
have to
put
put,
11 as a prefix for overtime, correct?
I don't know. Actually, all ours is 21 time. We have to put a prefix if we're on a fire, a suffix in there based on the shift,
Right.
and then we code it as whatever it is with whatever P code or home base unit code we're working on. So
Right.
it's much different than GS. So I'm not having very good luck getting assistance.
It's super complex, and you're probably running into people at HR who don't even understand it, right?
That's correct. When they hired me, I knew my pay wasn't right. So on the bottom of the WG pay scale, there's a guy that sits in Washington, D.C. that works for DOD. I actually looked him up on Outlook and emailed him. He typed out this big long letter and I sent it to my HR staffer when they hired me, and they revised my pay scale. They had to pay me on a special pay rate scale due to that memorandum Biden signed, the 2022-22, meaning that no employees can make less than $15 an hour. Well, that pushed everybody up on the WG scale up to a WG7. They had to revamp all their pay. So it's been interesting so far, but I appreciate the work you guys are putting in.
There's a guy in Region 8 who's really been working hard on wage grade reforms as well. Not just this stuff, because you guys have a lot of complications. If you sent, I can't remember his name. It's Joe. But he'd be a great resource. The guy's smart. He knows all this stuff. He's been a wage grade for a long time. If you send an email to the grassroots, it's just grassrootswildlandfirefighters@gmail.com. I'll get you his info.
Is that website is that email on the website? Because I've tried reaching out, not very seriously in the past, just because I really had no specific questions, but I'm looking for WG guys that can provide guidance, because we're on a Job Corps center working with students every day, and everybody around us is GS employees, and there are no WG folks.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, there's a good network out there. So yeah, just send an email to grassrootswildlandfirefighters@gmail.com, and we'll get you hooked into some folks.
I'll do it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Did we miss any? I think we've been able to get all of them. Johnny had to jump off, but man, we're so fortunate to have him in our group and his expertise. So yeah, he's good hand. Anything else out there? If you're talking to folks and they missed the meeting and they're bummed out, we put all these up on our YouTube channel. Let's just get on YouTube and search for Grassroots Wildland Firefighters, and people will be able to look at it. And we're probably going to start recording the Q&A. We haven't been doing that to kind of protect people, but there's a lot of great information because y'all are asking really good questions. So
If you give the email address again.
I'm going to type it. It's just Grassroots Wildland Firefighters, all one word, @gmail. And we monitor that continuously because we have a separate one for media. All right, I think that's a wrap. Luke, closing comments.
I just want to thank everyone. I'm an advocate for advocacy, whichever way you go, do it all. Look at union options, continue to be a part of grassroots. We need everyone in this, and we need everyone pulling in the same direction. So again, that's the intent and purpose of grassroots, to provide a platform that creates a voice and a presence internally and externally in the halls of Congress, in the halls of the Washington office administration, and then keeping the pressure on through the media. It's already been a tough fire season. I'm sure everyone's seen what's happened in Hawaii, the California fatalities, or Rogue River Siskiyou fatality, and others. So keep those people in your thoughts, keep yourself safe, and keep educating yourself, pushing forward. and help us out. We got to keep moving in the same direction to get the ball moving forward and to start flanking these issues. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the heck out of everyone here.
Thanks all. Good evening.
Thank you, everyone.